if you're selling anything with CBD or any other type of supplement, whether it's weight loss or immunity or anything, you are affected by this. Have you recently found out that you're on Stripe's restricted business list? Well, rest assured, you are not alone. Stripe has hundreds of businesses listed as restricted on their terms of service. What that means for you is that it can get complicated if you're relying on Stripe solely for your payments. So on this week's episode of Uncensored Direct Marketing, I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about what the Stripe restricted business list is, what it means for your business, and I'll give you a couple of tips and strategies to ensure that your business doesn't have any repercussions from this. And if you've been shut down, obviously, I will let you know how to make sure that your business keeps running and accepting payments. So in terms of what is the restricted list, Stripe has an exhaustive list of hundreds of businesses that they consider restricted. So what that means is that they will allow you to process, but there are certain restrictions in place. And if, for example, they see high refunds or high disputes, they may in fact be very quick in shutting you down and shutting off the business. Now, this is different than prohibited. Just to let you know, there's prohibited businesses and there's restricted businesses. When it's prohibited, what that means is that you are never allowed to process with Stripe. And this is, in general for all payment processes and processors, I should say, is prohibited means anything illegal, anything that, drug related or, that kind of stuff. So, you can't be surprised, obviously, if you're doing something illegal, that you're not going to be approved for a merchant account or for payment processing. But I'm really focusing right now, as I said, on restricted. And restricted could mean anything from credit repair, anything that has to do with travel plans, airlines, rentals, and so forth. Supplements are also on the restricted list. If you're selling anything with CBD or any other type of supplement, whether it's weight loss or immunity or anything, you are affected by this. So as per the restrictions on Stripe, they say that you need to get authorization in order to be able to use their service. Now, most merchants obviously do not, and a lot of them are not impacted. But if you're going to start scaling and having a lot of volume, like over $25,000 and so forth, you should keep in mind that you will need a backup if you are on the restricted list with Stripe. Because if something goes wrong or you have a bad month or too many disputes come in, you will get suspended immediately. Your funds will be held, and there may be some problems that come up. So keep in mind, if you're working with Stripe and you're on a restricted list, or you're, like I said, selling supplements, anything in travel and so forth, you need to make sure that you have a backup in place while you're processing with Stripe. You should not rely on one traffic source. You should not rely on one of anything. So please make sure that you have a backup merchant account or a backup processor in case there's a problem with Stripe. Stripe isn't restrictive or actually isn't exhaustive, as I was saying, about their businesses, because they want to give themselves some wiggle room. They want to give themselves an out so you don't have any recourse to them if they shut your business down. So keep in mind having backups in place and making sure that, you're using your backups. So if you, for example, open up a backup merchant account or have another type of payment processor, you should be putting at least 20% of your volume on that backup to make it a viable backup. So keep that in mind. If you're working with Stripe, just like if you're working with anybody, depending on the scale of your business, obviously, once you start hitting the $25,000, $30,000, $40,000 a month, this is when you should start thinking about having reliable backups for all systems in your business. So, traffic sources, you should have diversified those, and you should have, a backup server and so on and so forth. So this is not, this is just like not applicable for payment processors. It's really applicable for all areas of your business, and nobody will fault you of having a backup. Now, a few key takeaways and things that you should keep in mind if you are a restricted business, if you have been shut down, and I'm really sorry, if you've been shut down and you're listening to this video trying to figure out what to do, the number one thing, and I've said this a couple of times in many other videos that I have about Stripe and payment processing and so forth, is that if you're shut down, your first instinct would be to try to fight it. But just to let you know, it's likely not going to yield very good results. If you've been on the Stripe restricted business list and they shut you down, it's usually permanent. So your first instinct should really be to get an account right away if you don't have a backup. If you have a backup, it's to divert your volume directly to that backup and start getting yourself another solution to make sure that you have a backup to the backup that you had before. So keep that in mind. Don't go and open another Stripe account or, get somebody else to open an account for you. That these are not good tactics. And this will just, cause more problems in your business. It might get you match listed, which is basically a blacklist from all payment processors, not just Stripe. So keep that in mind. Going to another, and getting another account through Stripe is not your best solution. You could decide maybe PayPal can be your backup, but keep in mind, both these companies have very similar ways of working and acceptance and so forth. So, it's not necessary. It could be an interim solution to get something going quickly before you get your own account. If you are on the restricted list with Stripe, keep in mind you are more likely to experience funding holds or your account shut down just because they've already identified you as a high risk merchant. So it's very likely that if something goes wrong, you will have your funds held or they may shut you down with very little notice. And as I mentioned, if you do get shut down, don't open another Stripe account. Remember me on that one. And the most important thing, for you to remember, it's that it's not the end of your business. I mean, there are hundreds of business types in the restricted business list on Stripe's website. And, if you go on, and I encourage you to go on and read it, you'll see that there's hundreds of business types, which means there's, probably millions of businesses operating in these niches, and they're all still prospering and they're all still processing. So just because your business is restricted doesn't mean that you're doing anything unethical or anything wrong. It just falls outside of the risk appetite of Stripe. They don't want to take risks on these types of businesses, but there are plenty of payment processors and payment solutions like Direct PayNet or anybody that you can look through and get referrals where, we at Direct PayNet work with merchants who are in these, maybe gray area niches. And I don't even like saying that because, a supplements business is, it can be a very clean business. There are a couple of bad apples, but most merchants who are operating in these businesses are trying to make sure that they're operating legally and ethically and so forth. So just, don't fret if you are on the restricted list. It doesn't mean that nobody's going to want to work with you. There are plenty of other options. It just means that you have to make sure that you have backups in place. And that if you are working with Stripe, that you have, a plan B should something go wrong. So I hope you enjoy this episode. Please make sure to subscribe so you can get more content. I have weekly content that we talk about everything that can impact your online business and direct response. And as usual, any comments or any feedback, feel free to leave them below the episode or send me an email or any social media. Thanks again for listening and have yourself a great day.